Today, FBI reaches out to residents during Nancy Guthrie investigation.
Good evening. The clock reads 3:47 a.m. on a Sunday, Tucson, Arizona. I'm bringing you a story about federal law enforcement moving into a quiet suburban neighborhood in Arizona, but what started as a missing person case has unraveled into something far darker. What authorities discovered behind closed doors suggests a kidnapping orchestrated by one of the most dangerous criminal networks ever to infiltrate American soil. This is the untold story of Operation Pathway, a 6-month federal investigation that exposed how a Mexican cartel had embedded itself so deeply into a border state that it could take American citizens from their homes with near impunity. The streets are empty. Most of the city sleeps. In a quiet neighborhood where tree-lined streets curve past modest homes with manicured lawns, everything appears normal, peaceful, even. But in one house, on one porch, something terrible is about to be discovered. Nancy Guthrie, a 62-year-old woman, a mother of 3, vanishes without a trace. Her family will not see her alive again for weeks. What they will find instead is blood, forensic evidence, a ransom note demanding millions of dollars in cryptocurrency, and a message that tells federal investigators one unmistakable truth: someone inside this cartel knew exactly where to find her, and they knew she had money. Within hours, the FBI is mobilized. Tucson Field Office, Phoenix Field Office. Dozens of special agents start building a case that should have been simple: find the kidnappers, find the victim. But it was never going to be simple. Because the kidnapping was not random. It was not the work of local criminals. It was a calculated strike by an organization that had spent years positioning itself as the dominant force in human trafficking, drug smuggling, and organized extortion across Arizona and Southern California. They call themselves Los Lobos del Cartel, the wolves of the cartel. They are the enforcement arm of the Culiacan Syndicate, one of Mexico's most violent drug trafficking organizations. By Tuesday morning, federal agents are moving door to door through Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. The road is blocked. Pima County Sheriff's vehicles form a perimeter. The FBI presence is unmistakable. Agents in dark blue windbreakers knock on every door, asking neighbors if they saw anything unusual. Did you hear a vehicle? Did you see someone you didn't recognize? Did anyone mention unusual activity? The neighbors don't realize they are also looking for something else: surveillance footage, delivery records, any evidence that the cartel had been watching this neighborhood for months, mapping escape routes, studying the patterns of affluent families, identifying targets. What the FBI finds in Nancy's home sends shock waves through the investigation. Her bedroom window has been forced from the outside. There are signs of a struggle. Blood on the porch belongs to Nancy Guthrie. The medical examiner will later determine she was injured during abduction, likely struck when she resisted. In her home office, investigators discover something more troubling: financial statements showing that Nancy Guthrie's late husband had made significant investments in several businesses across Arizona and California. Real estate development, import-export logistics, agricultural equipment. Perfectly legitimate on the surface. But the FBI's financial analysts immediately recognize the pattern. These are the exact types of enterprises used by drug cartels to launder money and move product across state lines without triggering federal attention. Now, 48 hours into the investigation, things accelerate dramatically. A local Tucson television station receives a message. Then another station receives a similar message. The messages contain photographs of Nancy Guthrie. She is alive, but clearly held against her will. The ransom demand is staggering: $3 million in Bitcoin, transferred within 72 hours, or she will be executed. The deadline is Monday at 5 p.m. The threat is explicit: no negotiations, no extensions, pay or she dies. The FBI immediately assumes command of the situation. They do not believe the ransom is genuine. This is not a simple kidnapping. This is a cartel operation, and cartel kidnappings rarely end with the victim being returned alive, even if ransom is paid. The Bureau notifies the family. Nancy's 3 adult children, Cameron, Annie, and Savannah, are devastated. They make public pleas on social media and local news, desperate for any information about their mother's whereabouts. Cameron's voice cracks as he speaks directly to his mother's captors. "We want to talk. We are waiting for contact. Please let us know what we need to do." The words are heartbreaking. The family is being torn apart by uncertainty. But the FBI is not waiting for ransom demands or family pleas. Special agents are already building a different kind of case. They have activated their intelligence networks. DEA sources along the border are being mobilized. ICE agents who have been tracking cartel movements are now fully engaged. The federal government is treating this not as a kidnapping but as a cartel operation on American soil, which means this is now a matter of national security. On Wednesday morning, FBI forensic analysts begin examining digital evidence seized from Nancy's home. Her laptop, her phone records, her banking history. They cross-reference everything with intelligence gathered from cartel surveillance footage captured by Border Patrol drones. What emerges is a terrifying revelation. Nancy Guthrie was not chosen randomly. She was chosen because her family's financial networks connected to a larger money laundering operation that the Culiacan syndicate had been operating for over 5 years in Arizona. The analysts trace the money flows. They follow shell corporations. They expose ghost businesses. Taco restaurants in Phoenix where cash deposits never matched reported sales. A logistics firm in Yuma that handled shipments of produce, but the invoices show boxes moving across the border at night, through unmanned checkpoints, with altered weights and dimensions. Real estate development companies that purchased property in strategic locations, always near highway corridors, always near airports, always near major distribution hubs. The picture becomes clear. The cartel was not just smuggling drugs. It was establishing permanent infrastructure. It was becoming embedded in the economic fabric of Arizona. The investigation widens. FBI agents begin pulling phone records for everyone connected to Nancy's business associates. They obtain warrants. They intercept communications. And then, in a series of encrypted messages on a dark web platform, they discover something that changes everything. One name appears repeatedly in messages discussing Nancy Guthrie's abduction. The name is associated with a fictional state official, Governor Marcus Reeves, the sitting governor of Arizona. Reeves is not a cartel member in the traditional sense. He does not manufacture drugs or traffic human beings. But what the FBI discovers is far more damaging. Governor Reeves has been allowing the cartel to operate with near impunity. In exchange for substantial bribes, roughly $800,000 per month, Reeves has ensured that state law enforcement agencies receive altered intelligence reports. He has delayed investigations. He has removed key state police officers who were getting too close to the cartel's operations. He has even influenced border security deployments, ensuring that certain corridors near cartel-controlled territory are left undermanned during peak trafficking hours. The evidence is damning. Digital signatures on encrypted messages match Reeves' known communication patterns. Financial transfers trace from a Cayman Islands account directly to his personal wealth management firm. Text messages between Reeves and cartel operatives use coded language discussing asset protection, which agents interpret as security for cartel property and personnel. One message reads, "The asset in question requires immediate retrieval. Arrange it through the usual channels. Local interference should be minimal. The asset is Nancy Guthrie. The usual channels are corrupt state police officers on cartel payroll. Local interference means any law enforcement agencies that might actually try to stop the abduction. This is not corruption. This is command-level collusion. This is engineered treason." Governor Marcus Reeves, the chief executive of Arizona, has transformed the state into a secure operations hub for a Mexican drug cartel. And Nancy Guthrie's kidnapping is just one visible crime in a much larger criminal conspiracy. On Friday, the FBI convenes an emergency task force meeting. The location is the federal building in downtown Phoenix. Present are agents from the FBI's Phoenix Field Office, the DEA ICE, the U.S. Marshals Service, Arizona Department of Public Safety, Pima County Sheriff's Office, and representatives from the Department of Homeland Security. The briefing is stark. Investigators have identified at least 43 officers and officials within Arizona law enforcement and government who have been compromised by the cartel. Some have accepted bribes. Some have leaked confidential information. Some have actively provided protection for cartel movements. The scope of infiltration is staggering. A decision is made at that meeting. Operation Pathway will be executed in full. It will be the largest coordinated federal law enforcement action in Arizona since the 1980s. Over 800 federal and state agents will be deployed. Helicopter support will be provided by the Arizona National Guard. Border Patrol resources will be repositioned. SWAT teams from Phoenix, Tucson, and Flagstaff will conduct simultaneous raids across 14 locations across the state. The operation begins Saturday morning at 5:30 a.m. In a nondescript warehouse in South Phoenix, agents move at dawn. The location is a known drug superlab, a facility where the cartel processes bulk cocaine shipments, mixing them with fentanyl to increase potency and addiction potential. Over 50,000 fentanyl pills are discovered in the warehouse, along with 40 kilos of uncut cocaine. There is also a fully operational methamphetamine production unit in the backrooms, capable of producing 50 pounds of meth per day. As agents sweep through the facility, they discover something unexpected: encrypted servers containing the complete distribution network for the entire Southwest cartel operation. Names, addresses, bank account numbers, everything. Simultaneously, 60 miles north, A second SWAT team raids a private residence in Scottsdale belonging to Miguel Cortez, a cartel lieutenant. Cortez is the man who planned Nancy Guthrie's abduction. In his home office, agents find a wall covered with surveillance photographs of wealthy families across Arizona and California. Nancy Guthrie's photo is circled in red. There are dozens of others: CEOs, investors, business owners, all marked as potential kidnapping targets. Agents also discover detailed maps showing cartel-controlled safe houses, with Nancy Guthrie's current location circled and dated. A third team hits an underground casino operation in central Phoenix that serves as a money-laundering hub. Federal agents pour through the facility, seizing gaming machines, cash registers, and banking equipment. They find over $3.2 million in physical currency stashed in hidden wall safes. The casino is registered to a shell corporation, but the beneficial owner listed in the encrypted files is none other than Governor Marcus Reeves. By noon, the operation has expanded to include the arrest of 17 cartel members, 3 major drug traffickers, and 1 state police lieutenant colonel. The lieutenant colonel, a man named David Hinton, had been providing the cartel with real-time information about DEA operations and Border Patrol deployment patterns. He had also been facilitating the movement of cartel operatives across state lines by providing them with legitimate law enforcement credentials. But the climax of Operation Pathway comes at 2:15 p.m., when federal agents converge on the governor's mansion in downtown Phoenix. The scene is unprecedented. News helicopters circle overhead. SWAT teams surround the property. A convoy of federal vehicles with flashing lights blocks all exit routes. Governor Marcus Reeves watches from his office window as armed federal agents pour out of vehicles, securing the perimeter with military precision. Within minutes, Reeves is escorted from the building in handcuffs. His face is blank. He does not resist. He knows what they have found. As federal agents search the governor's residence, they discover something that will shock the American public when it becomes public knowledge. A complete secondary network of communications devices. Encrypted phones. Hidden servers. A private office space unknown to the governor's security detail. In that office, they find original copies of transfer agreements showing how cartel money was moved through shell corporations and into Reeves' personal bank accounts. The total amount is $14.7 million, accumulated over 5 years. The cartel had not just corrupted the governor. They had purchased him, body and soul. Nancy Guthrie is found alive on Saturday evening at 7:42 p.m. in a cartel safe house in the mountains north of Tucson. She is dehydrated and injured, but conscious. Paramedics treat her wounds. FBI agents conduct an initial interview, but given her condition, the full debriefing will wait. What matters in this moment is that she is alive. She will go home to her children. As news of her rescue spreads, the families of other cartel victims of human trafficking, victims of drug overdoses, victims of cartel violence, finally feel like someone is fighting for them. Federal prosecutors announce that they will be pursuing charges against Governor Reeves ranging from money laundering and racketeering to conspiracy to commit kidnapping and human trafficking. The charges carry sentences that could total over 100 years in federal prison. But the story does not end with Reeves' arrest. The investigation reveals that the Culiacan syndicate's infrastructure in Arizona was only one piece of a much larger operation. The cartel had successfully embedded similar networks in California, Nevada, and New Mexico. They had turned the entire Southwest into a cartel supply corridor. From the initial seizures in Operation Pathway alone, federal agents recovered over 200 tons of narcotics in the first 72 hours. Cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, fentanyl. The drug supply that would have killed thousands of Americans was now in federal custody. What becomes clear to investigators is that the cartel's strategy was not to operate in the shadows. It was to become the system itself. By corrupting the governor, cartel operators had gained the ability to reshape law enforcement priorities, redirect federal resources, and create safe passages for their operations. The cartel was not infiltrating the government. The cartel was becoming the government. The human cost of this operation becomes apparent in the weeks following Operation Pathway. Investigators examining sealed cartel ledgers discover that Los Lobos del Cartel was responsible for the deaths of at least 147 people in Arizona alone over the past 3 years. Overdose deaths from cartel-supplied fentanyl. Murders of rival dealers. Executions of informants. Violence was not just a byproduct of cartel operations, it was a management tool. Fear was the mechanism through which the cartel maintained control. The case against Governor Reeves and the 17 co-conspirators becomes the largest corruption trial in Arizona history. Federal prosecutors present evidence that fills 12,000 pages. Witnesses testify. Cartel operatives, facing decades in prison, cooperate with federal investigators and describe the mechanics of how they paid Reeves, how they coordinated with corrupt law enforcement officers, how they moved drugs and money and human trafficking victims across state lines with near-complete immunity. Reeves testifies in his own defense, claiming that the cartel threatened his family, that he was coerced, that he had no choice. But the evidence tells a different story. The evidence shows that Reeves had actively negotiated prices with cartel operators, that he had suggested which law enforcement personnel should be removed from office because they were inconvenient obstacles, that he had attended secret meetings with cartel leadership at a private ranch south of the border in Sonora. This was not coercion. This was partnership. The trial lasts 6 weeks. The jury deliberates for 5 days. On a Wednesday afternoon in June, the verdict is read, guilty on all counts. Governor Marcus Reeves is sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The impact on Arizona is immediate and profound. The Department of Homeland Security assumes temporary control of border security operations throughout the state. Federal oversight is extended to all state law enforcement agencies. The Arizona Department of Public Safety undergoes a complete restructuring. Officers and officials compromised by the cartel are prosecuted. 23 state police officers accept plea agreements. 8 judges are forced to resign. 2 state senators are indicted. But the real story that emerges from Operation Pathway is not about corruption or crime. It is about how silently power can be transferred from democratically elected officials to criminal networks if there is no resistance, no transparency, and no accountability. The cartel did not need to stage a coup. They did not need to use force. They only needed someone ambitious enough to accept their money, and once that person was compromised, the entire system that person controlled became an instrument of cartel operations. Nancy Guthrie eventually heals from her physical injuries. The psychological wounds will take longer. She participates in a documentary about her kidnapping and the federal investigation that followed. In that documentary, she speaks about the moment she realized she was being taken, about the fear, about the sense of helplessness. But she also speaks about the FBI agents who found her, about the federal prosecutors who built a case so strong that the cartel infrastructure collapsed, about the belief that the system could be restored. What happened in Arizona in the spring of 2024 is not an isolated incident. It is a warning about how deeply criminal organizations can penetrate democratic institutions if those institutions are weakened by corruption, if oversight is absent, if the people who take oaths to defend the law prioritize personal gain over those oaths. Operation Pathway exposed a network so extensive, so organized, so normalized within government that some analysts believe the Culiacan syndicate could have successfully operated in Arizona for another decade if the FBI had not discovered the kidnapping of one woman. One woman. That is how close the cartel came to completely transforming Arizona into a territory governed by criminal law rather than constitutional law. The investigation into cartel operations continues. Federal agents are now focusing on other states, other governors, other officials who may have been compromised. What they are discovering suggests that the problem is far wider than anyone initially believed. The cartel had not just embedded itself in Arizona. It had embedded itself across the southwest border region, and it had done so with the cooperation of elected officials who chose profit over principle. If you have watched this story to the end, you understand now why this case matters. This is not just about one missing woman or one corrupt governor. This is about the mechanisms through which organized crime can capture entire state governments. This is about the silence that allows corruption to flourish. This is about the importance of federal agencies having the resources and authority to investigate threats to democracy itself, whether those threats wear a cartel uniform or a business suit and govern from a state capital. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie opened a door that has now revealed how thoroughly the Culiacan syndicate had positioned itself as an alternative power structure in Arizona. The federal response, Operation Pathway, slammed that door shut, but only because agents refused to accept a simple narrative of a missing person. They dug deeper. They followed the money. They exposed the corruption. And in doing so, they reminded us that the system, despite its flaws, can still fight back against those who would weaponize it for profit. This story is a fictional dramatization created for educational and narrative purposes. The characters, agencies, and specific operations described here are invented. However, the underlying pattern of cartel infiltration into state government is a real concern that law enforcement agencies across America monitor constantly. The tactics described in this narrative, money laundering through legitimate businesses, corruption of law enforcement, establishment of regional hubs for operations, are actual methods used by transnational criminal organizations. The story of Operation Pathway reminds us that power does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes power only needs silence, ambition, and someone willing to break their oath. The cost of that kind of power is measured not just in dollars or drugs seized, but in lives lost, in families destroyed, in communities poisoned by the systems that were supposed to protect them. If you are still watching, if this story has moved you, consider supporting federal law enforcement agencies and organizations dedicated to combating cartel operations. Share this story so others understand the stakes. Comment below if you believe corruption at the highest levels of government deserves maximum accountability. This is a work of fiction, but it is fiction rooted in real threats that demand real vigilance. The system was designed to be stronger than any single person or any single criminal organization. But that design only holds if the people who take oaths to defend it actually keep those oaths. Nancy Guthrie was found alive because good people did their jobs. That has to be enough.